And this for me, when I had that reality check moment when I lost the 14K, was like, fuck me, you have no purpose, no goals, no desire. What the fuck are you doing? Yes, I'd made 250K from match betting. I'd spent the majority of that on travel, doing anything that I wanted to essentially. If I wanted to go overseas, I'd just go overseas. I wanted to skydive and jump out of a helicopter in Switzerland, I'd do that. And I could just make mindless money whenever I want from match betting. But what the fuck is my goal? What am I on this planet for? So after coming across match betting in 2014, I realized that I would never have to worry about money again. That was a realization moment for me. I then went overseas with my mate, traveled Europe and America for 75 days, came back, unfortunately broke every single bone in my face. This was March 2015. Now, this video or this episode is going to be talking about the time between 2015 and 2020, where I made roughly $250,000 off matched betting. However, through this time, I was still at university and I traveled a lot. Obviously, my face was still recovering. I went on an overseas trip to Iceland in July, August of 2015. I went over there solo. It was an awesome trip. 7 or 8 days solo, did the ring road, did the West Fjords, amazing scenery, absolutely elite, my favorite country on the planet still to this day. I also managed to go to a little bit of a side quest trip with my father, who's from Cyprus. He's obviously passed away now, but that was an elite trip. We went to Turkey, we went to Jordan, and we went to Israel. Absolutely sick to go through that Middle East part of the world. Coming back, I actually moved out of home in that year as well. So once I came across the money that I was making from match betting, I wanted to explore what was outside of, I guess, the four walls of my parents' home, right? I didn't plan this, but an ad came up on Facebook through someone that I knew, and he said, hey, I'm looking for a roommate. I said, cool, I'm in, let's go. Now, to that point, my face was still recovering in 2015 from the accident, but I went out of my way, launched, and within a week, I think I was moved into his house, bang. Pretty cool. That's how I make decisions. I've always made decisions spontaneously growing up. That Iceland trip that I did, I think I actually booked it a week before going. I had an idea, looked up some cool shit in Iceland. I'm going to Iceland for 6 days or 7 days. And that's how I operate. Because I had the financial freedom and the ability to do that, that was how I rolled. Now, through that year as well, I obviously continued to live off my match betting. I was still at university, but my sole income or my sole life money was coming entirely from match betting. I started to do footy, NRL. I then had a period where I did Wimbledon for about, I think it was a 2-week period where I made about 10K. 2015 Wimbledon, where I'd stay up at night. There was some promotions on William Hill and things like that, Bet365 from memory, Tab as well, etc., which was super valuable. Long story short, over the next 2 or 3 years, I actually just continued to live off the match betting. I was playing footy still. I didn't work, no work. I did finish my university degree though in 2016, where I went back to university, did my master's, and actually can call myself a doctor. Now I can't because I'm deregistered, but I was a doctor of osteopathy for 4 or 5 years or whatever until I got deregistered when I failed to do my registration again back in sort of 2022. But what happened during this time was I was slowly learning things about myself. I was learning about running a business. I obviously started an osteo business out of a gym in Moorabbin, Melbourne Strength Culture. Jamie Smith, he took me on. I had my room there. I'd pay him a fixed rate per week where I just bring in as many clients as I wanted to. And as long as I paid the rent, it was fine. So I'd be taking on anywhere from 5 to 20 patients a week. I also moved to a place in Clayton, which I then got a second bedroom for the osteopathy business to run out of that bedroom. So I had my own bedroom, I had my kitchen, I lived by myself. And then the second bedroom actually was for the business. So I'd set up the massage table and I'd set up all my dry needling stuff and all that shit. And obviously I was in a position where I could work out of my own home, which was sick. I then also opened up into a gym. I started working out of Into Performance in Noble Park. And that was really cool as well to get some clientele through there. But I was still learning about myself. Through this time, I was on and off with my match betting. I actually joined forces with Tom. Tom came across and asked me, hey, what do you think about this match betting side hustle? And basically I knew he did it a little bit. Long story short, we had a coffee meeting and we basically started our own syndicate where we'd collaborate, and that was the match betting that I did for the next couple of years on and off with Tom, through periods where we'd go together, then he'd go overseas, I'd go overseas, and then we'd have a break, come back to it. And the best part was probably a period in 2018 where we made $80,000 in a 10-week period during the Spring Carnival. It's still one of the most amazing, crazy stories that I can remember through my match betting career. In hindsight, it's not a lot of money in the whole scheme of things with match betting. The members in our community now are making a lot more than that at the top end, but it was the way in which it was made. It was absolutely nailed. We had an organized setup where we'd go to Tom's house, his little bungalow out the back of his parents, every Wednesday and some Saturdays, and basically nailed that for about 10 weeks. We'd just hammer bonuses, we'd obviously accumulate bonuses, and then turn them over through Betfair and guarantee ourselves a turnover of 80% or whatever it is. That there was one of the most enjoyable periods of my match betting. Now, fast forward, why am I going here? Well, basically over the next sort of from 2015 to 2019, I made my 250K, and then I got to the start of 2020, and my dad was actually diagnosed with motor neuron disease in 2017, right? So he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. If you don't know what that is, it is an illness where basically it's a neurological disorder where your muscles and eventually your respiratory muscles don't work anymore, right? The signals between the motor neuron and the muscle unfortunately die, and therefore eventually the muscles die. And ultimately that leads to death. And it's a terminal illness that has no cure, and there's not really anything that can help it. It's just, okay, you're gonna die basically, you've got this disease, there's nothing you can do about it, enjoy your life, and that's it. It's pretty morbid. Now, he was diagnosed with that in 2017, I think. He was going to Africa, whether this is off topic or not, but he actually got an injection for, if I know what it was something to get overseas, and from that time he actually got symptoms, and then whatever. Anyway, I'm not saying anything about that, but personally I think that's why he got it, but whatever. Now, 2020 was a crucial moment in my life, because what happened in 2020 was I had to move closer to home. And I'd moved closer to home at the start of 2020 because I realized that my dad was actually getting sicker and sicker. He was slowing down. Long story short, with motor neuron disease, you lose parts of your body. So in terms of like, you lose your hand movements, you lose your ability to walk. Now, for context, he was a tradie. He was an absolutely massively hardworking air conditioning mechanic who would work 6 days a week for as long as I know, right? He was a hardworking guy, started his own business, came with nothing from Cyprus when he was 10 years old, and obviously started his business. And my mum, she was his accountant, his manager, and ran the business on the admin side, and he was the worker, right? He would work fucking hours. That's all I remember my dad doing, is working. However, when he got sick, obviously he continued to work until 2020, when he really started to slow down. So he'd have falls, he'd fall over, we had to get him a stick, walking frame, and eventually he had to succumb to the fact that he can't actually do this anymore. We had to buy him a frame, and then obviously he was bedridden. We had to install a stomach tube into his stomach, because eventually with motor neuron disease, you actually don't have the ability to swallow as well, and it actually becomes a choking risk. Once you start eating food, and once you start salivating and all this saliva comes, and then you start aspirating, food can go into your lungs, cause infection, yada, 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 all the fun shit. Anyway, he lost his speech probably start of 2020, gone, can't speak anymore. Couldn't walk anymore, was needing help going to the toilet. I used to shower him, I used to wipe his ass, I used to clean I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. But what I realized was I needed to move closer. So I was living in Clayton, I actually moved to Dandenong North, my parents, closer towards that area. And I was helping my mum multiple days a week, probably most days go over there, keep him company, put him to bed, etc., etc. It was pretty shitty period of my life personally, in terms of seeing my dad go through that. And to be honest, yeah, I mean, it built me to who I am today. But what happened was, at the start of 2020, there was the lockdowns. Obviously, the big sham that it was in hindsight, lockdowns, and obviously everyone couldn't do anything. And basically, I couldn't practice as an osteopath. So what that did was, I didn't love osteopathy. I was very good at my osteopathy. I was very good at helping people. The two things that I knew from osteo was I loved helping people, and I got a lot of reward from seeing people get better. And I love helping people, rewards, probably the same thing. But the third thing probably was the fact that I knew that I could influence and change people's mindsets really fast. For example, like someone would come into my thing and say, I want to lose weight. And even though it's an osteopath, I also did some strength coaching and training and stuff like that, where I'd be like, okay, do this. The person would come back in 12 weeks and they've lost 15 kilos because they followed the advice. I had really good ability to get through to people. So I knew this. My ability to talk and coach was always good. But I didn't love it. I used to get anxiety thinking about having to get to a session. And in hindsight, it's probably the fact that I don't love time. I don't love, oh, JP, you need to be at this time by 3 o'clock. No, fuck that. I like to be flexible. That's a bit of an inner, I don't know, mental model that I have that actually makes me anxious. If there's that time that I need to get there, or if there's a curfew, or if there's a certain, like, you need to be there by 6 o'clock, I used to hate it. So once the osteo actually got deleted because of the lockdowns, I actually was able to free myself up from being able to not have to worry about the osteo anymore. And it gave me a lot of mental energy back. My mental bandwidth increased. I was able to do more things. And that actually gave me a massive clarity moment. Now, through this time, I was actually learning how to trade Forex. Long story short, I'd studied it for about 6 months. If you don't know what Forex is, it's currency trading. It's another way of gambling. Obviously, match betting is not gambling, but a lot of people think that they're investing when they do Forex. A lot of scammers out there, a lot of bots and all these things. Long story short, I thought I knew a lot more than I did, and I lost $14,000 trading Forex in 2.5 weeks. Now, this is an example of one of the downsides of match betting that happened through my 6 years where I made my 250K, was that I became desensitized to money. I actually knew that I would never have to worry about money again, and if I lost money, then I'd be in a position of like, who cares? Right, so losing 14K for me, I had about an 80K net worth at that time, 80K savings. I lost my 14K, would have taken me back to like 65. And I was like, fuck, yeah, right. So that position there is like, well, now you can actually appreciate that nothing is easy, right? Yeah, cool, it's easy to make money match betting, but you can't just throw it away like that. That's a reality check moment for you. I got over it in a day. I laughed about it when it happened, but I learned a massive lesson. And from then on, what happened then was that we actually created the business that is now known today. And I want to reflect on this, and I'll talk about the business in the next episode, but that minus 14K actually followed up by me watching a video from Bob Proctor called Changing Your Paradigm. And what happened there was, I don't know how this happened, I'll explain it more in the next episode, but I actually realized that I needed to find something that I was passionate about, right? Yes, I'd made 250K from match betting. I'd spent the majority of that on travel, doing anything that I wanted to, essentially. I used to, if I wanted to go overseas, I'd just go overseas. If I wanted to skydive and jump out of a helicopter in Switzerland, I'd do that. If I wanted to jump out of a plane in Dubai, I would do that. And I did all of these things, right? I did anything and everything. And if you wanted to do it, if I wanted to do something, I was never held back by money. Right? That was massive for me, and it fully changed my life from that moment on. Obviously, you've heard this already, but that negative was that I had no purpose, I had no goals, what was I doing? There was no motive behind anything I did. My osteo business was just there because I finished my osteo degree, and I could just make mindless money whenever I want from match betting. But what the f is my goal? What am I on this planet for? And this, for me, when I had that reality check moment when I lost the 14K, was like, me, you have no purpose, no goals, no desire. What the fuck are you doing? And that's when I came across that video, and that video fully changed my life. And I'm going to talk about more in the next episode about how I actually started the business. But yeah, if you want me to do more of this, please tell me. If you have any questions, please write them in the comments. But if you think this is useless, also tell me. If you think this is boring, if you think this is not valuable, please tell me. But remember, I'm just telling the story for the time being. I'm just laying down context so that I can then relate this back to what is happening now, which is me running a 7-figure business in Australia in 2024. I'm going to continue telling my story in the next couple of episodes, and then we're going to get into the good shit. So follow along and send this to someone if you think it's interesting. Cheers.